All right, I'll do this for you. I'm going to call the Willington Board of Education Policy Committee to order. It is October 30th, 4:07 p.m. The items you have on your agenda, policy review service, and then the review of policy. There's four of them. Personally owned electronic mobile devices, the iPads, visits to schools, and public participation in board meetings. And then we can talk about any future agenda items. I'll start with the policy review service. So I've been sitting on this for a little while, and I was kind of waiting to see where we landed with our legal dollars, just simply because we had negotiations this year, and because we didn't go to mediation or arbitration, we had some money there, and so we subscribe to Shipman and Goodman has a policy service. And basically what it does is, based upon new legislation each year, they give you updates on policy to make sure you're meeting legal requirements. And then they have basically a whole list of policies that are model policies. So I now have a subscription. Today was the first day I was able to log into it. And I used it right away because I'm going to share some things with you today. And so I think it will help us. They don't have a policy for everything, but basically what I started to do today was match up in the 9000 series, which is several of what we're going to talk about, a couple of what we're going to talk about today. The 9000 series, I started matching up our policy list and what's in it with what they have for model policies. So I think it will be helpful for us as far as making sure we have the right information. And then two, it's a little more streamlined just because when I get feedback for policies, I have to send them out to the attorney, and then it's an hourly rate, and it's just, this is a consistent rate. So it was an upfront cost to get all the red light and model policies, and then next year there's an annual cost to it. And I don't think it changes your budget at all. It's like $1,000 a year. So I think it's worth it. But I hope you see it the same way. So I'll show you some of those things tonight as we work through what's there. Questions about that? Okay, so I'll go to the first policy is personally owned electronic mobile devices used in school. This is the suspended policy. And part of this flows into the iPad piece, and it's also going to flow into some of the conversation that I just information that I just shared as far as the model policies. One of the things I'm going to recommend to you is that you just either fully replace this with the other policy that you're working on that's in the hands of the board already, or to take, and I'm just pulling it up, take it and change. So you can delete this and it goes away, or you can change the numbers and just totally take the work that's been done and replace it here, and then all of this would go away. So part of me, and this flows into the iPad piece as well, Arthur, because of what you were saying, is when I read this is basically iPad, or sorry, the personally owned mobile devices is basically when people can bring their own device to school. We're providing them all now. So we provide iPads to certain grades. We provide Chromebooks to certain grades all the way through. And that's what they're working on. They're not working on their own bring your own device at this point. And I don't see that changing. And if it ever does, I think you can come back to policy. So my recommendation will be to absolutely just dump this. And the second part of this, and we can kind of discuss this as we go. It doesn't have to be both. The iPad piece is an old policy. When we went 1-to-1 in district with iPads starting in the middle school years ago, and this is outdated. And so now we're using Chromebooks, and it's just talks about just Hall Memorial School and not Center School, and Center School is also using iPads. Talks about care. The responsibilities really should be a reg. How it's handled, lost or stolen. All of these items, honestly, everything that's in here is old. So the repairing, replacing an iPad, it's all old. What I'm going to suggest to you is that you consider So here's an example now of the shipment policy. What they have is they have a 5,000 policy. We have a Willington internet policy in 6,000s. Um, they have it in 5,000s, which is in students. And so they are basically talking about the district's computer systems and internet safety in one policy. And what I really like about this, Arthur, and I think this is what you were getting at, is that how do we separate out something beyond a cell phone? And I think they did a good job of that here. So they start talking about smartwatches, walkie-talkies, personal gaming systems, Bluetooth speakers. All of the things that are in here are things that the district, anything that we provide as a district, um, we would be managing it, and it would all fall under this policy. If somebody else, if a student brought in their own device, it doesn't get connected to our network. And they make a decision in the regs as far as if it's allowed to be used. At this point, based upon the cell phone policy, I think the answer is no. And so I don't know that we can have a lot of discussion about this today, but I wanted to just share with you what my thoughts were. And so if you just go down, like the policy itself is just about the districts. They call the computer systems all of the pieces, and you can see that it encompasses all of those other things. And I shared this with you in a Google Doc today. And you have commenting ability in this. And then what they did is they added an administrative reg. And that's what we have, basically all the iPad information. We would put our Chromebook and iPad information down here. So what can they access? It talks about filtering. It talks about our ability as a school district to monitor any school device, that it's not private. All of those things are written into this. So it goes right through. There's the monitoring section. There's a student conduct section, which I really like. It's tied to the internet. It's tied to their actual device. It gets into the internet safety. We can talk about the student use agreement, which there is one for iPads. We can that can be tweaked, and then it just has the legal references. So when I say these three policies I see as really intertwined, the cell phone, the personally owned electronic mobile devices, which is the old one, and then this iPad, and also add in the internet security, you can see, sorry for making you dizzy. I need some explanation for this. I just couldn't share this ahead of time. This is the your internet safety policy. So we could put this all into one. And I've read through this, and I'm really going to tell you, I think that the shipment policy is clean. It's well written. I'd rather start from that and replace this with the shipment and make edits off of the shipment than take this one. So I'm going to stop sharing for a second just to get your feedback and ask, so you can ask questions. But again, the recap is recommendation to dump the personally owned electronic mobile devices policy. 2, to dump the iPad acceptable use policy and replace it with, which you're going to need time to read and make comments on, but you'd replace it with the Shipman district's computer systems and internet safety student use of that. And then I would say you dump the internet policy that you currently have, because it would then move into the other one. So these are all kind of going hand in hand. But I didn't want to do a ton of work until you had the ability to weigh in on it. And now that I have the shipment policy, I spent some time with that today, and I thought it was decent. So thoughts on what I just shared?
I like that it's comprehensive. So it would go from pre-K iPads all the way up to 8th grade Chromebooks. Do the kids use their Chromebooks in language? What kind of equipment do they use for their language class?
Yeah, they do. Yes.
They're Chromebooks.
You're
Okay.
talking about world language, you're talking about Spanish
Yeah.
class, and yes, they do. They use
Okay.
their Chromebooks. And that's what, so that policy, the shipment policy is more comprehensive. And what
Hmm.
it would allow you to do is if you said, you know what, we're going to get rid of Chromebooks and we're going laptops. The prices come way down. We're going to
Yeah.
get you laptops. We're going to go back to the carts. You could do that. If you wanted to do iPads across everybody, you could. Um, I think that having it all just like you did in the cell phone policy. There's a section that talks about center school. There's a section that talks about hall school. I think you could do that in here as well, and
Hmm.
basically say if you're a student and you're using an iPad, here are the expectations. If you're using a Chromebook, here are the expectations. If you're using some sort of new device that the district is trying, um, here are the expectations, and it's built
Hmm.
into that. And what would be adjusted is the admin reg, the administrator's reg. So
How about the Promethean boards? Does that fit in here or no? That's
uh,
more of a teacher
teacher driven, yeah,
teacher tool. Okay.
yep.
Okay. Thank you.
Arthur, Brianna, thoughts on?
So you want to add, so the things beyond Chromebooks, iPads, and cell phones are contained in the district systems. We're okay to rename these policies, right? We don't have to take them at face value because to me, that just creates I'm all for, having something be easy to search. And when someone's like, "Hey, are you allowed to bring? I don't know. You're allowed to bring a smartwatch." I'm sure that'll come up.
Yeah,
What's your policy on smartwatch? I don't know if searching for the district computer systems where that is contained will be easy enough to find and point to and say,
yep.
it's right here. Um, I I like the plan, the path to the plan. I just need some more time to go through the stuff, but I like the idea of
Absolutely.
where we're going.
Yeah, absolutely. So in the quote unquote model policy that you will get, you can adjust the name, you can put Willington language into it. It's a start, gives us a better frame, I think. Um, and without starting from scratch. And it also makes there's certain policies that it's you just want to make sure you have all the legal things right. Um, this may not be one of them, but it's important. Brianna, thoughts from you?
Hi. Oh, technology, technology, technology. If it's not a smartwatch, it'll be something else after that, and then after that, and after that. So we'll just keep reviewing over and over.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I think that this is broad enough, and that's why names it computer systems, that it can be anything and you don't have to come back to it. It's just what we adjust in the admin reg of acceptable use and how it's done. I just think it's a little bit cleaner. Um, and you're going to hear me say a similar thing when we get to the public participation section, because it's not a standalone policy for shipment. But I can the thing that I did for you as a committee is I shared the three of these policies that are model policies already. You should have gotten an email for them today, and it will allow you to log into that policy, and you can highlight any section of text and make comments. That way, you can see it, and if we edit something, you can all see it. Um, I think it's just an easier way to do it. And what I did was our old policy is our current policy is at the top of it. And if you scroll down through the policy, it's in yellow. It'll say shipment model policy, and underneath that is the shipment policy. So I agree. I mean, sorry for sending this to you today. It'll take some time, but I figured it was saving me a little bit of time too. I didn't want to give you something that it's already written. It's there. So if you're good with that. Can I move to visits? Are you okay with that? So I guess you're going to want to look at those really the district computer systems and internet safety section, and compare and let me know what you think. Right, let me pull up the visits one. So I did the same thing here. This is the visits to school piece. Um, there's some similarities in there. I'll be quite honest, I'm not sure what providing appropriate hospitality for visitors means in this policy. This is your current one. Um, but again, here's the Shipman version regarding visitors and observations in school. People want to come in, what they're allowed to do, what they're not allowed to do, why they're there, and the process if there is an administrative reg tied to this, where the building principal has the say to, say, yes, that's the appropriate, you have legitimate reason to be here. And they set the time, the date, all of those things. When it's something specific. This is not talking about, if a teacher wanted to have a room parent at the elementary school, it fits within this, but it gives us some guidance. So again, my suggestion would be to use this, start with from the model policy edit, and just to get away from what's in our current one. If there's something in the current one that you don't see in the other one, you can let me know. I looked at it already. I think it's actually more comprehensive in the current or in the model one. I will tell you that I think some of it is a little tight. It's restrictive in certain sections, and you're going to want to either adjust that or be okay with it. Again, questions on how to approach this. It's the same concept as what I just did for the other one. Going once, going twice.
Well, how soon do you want responses about that?
I mean, I'm not in any rush for this. I think we're more in a I wouldn't even say we're in a time crunch. We have a good cell phone policy. It's going to be adjusted. The iPad policy for the other one is already kind of outdated. So I would focus on that first. But at least this gives us a start. Like for if you put some feedback into this on your own, I can see it. I can make adjustments on the fly. So can everybody else. I can make the suggestions in it based upon your comments. And then when you come to meet, you'll be able to see, what the full piece looks like.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
Yep, sounds.
Keep moving. Okay. Let me get to close this one. All right. And so the last one, this one was not as I'll say clean. It was an interesting policy. So the public participation in board meetings is the section that this is where I would say why I started doing the review of the 9,000s, because we in Willington have it in certain sections. We've broken out some things, and basically what I did, I don't know if you can see it, you can kind of see it, is I just put them side by side. So what are the model policies, and then what don't we have? And in this public participation section that we have as a separate, and I understand Arthur's comment about, the nice thing when you have them separate is it's clear, like where's the public participation section, versus when you lump them together, it might be public participation, it might be communication, a bunch of things together. Shipman has a meeting conduct policy, which is this. They have several things, number one, that you don't have in your policies anywhere yet. But this is where they have the portion on public participation. So your current policy, again, basically just says, how can you participate? What do you do with communications when you get them? How does present to speak work, and how long is it? And then I will tell you that this is the one thing that attorneys really wanted you to do away with, is that you can say that they can only speak about announced topics, but their right for freedom of speech, they can speak on what they want. What they can't do is be boisterous and try and sabotage a meeting. But I've heard over and over and over about the comments have to be, you can complain about someone, that's their right. If you open up a present to speak, that is their right to do that. So in the meeting conduct, they address several things. So they talk about this electronic equipment and transmission. It just talks about, it's a guided through an agenda. There's the Roberts Rules piece in here. And then it gets into, randomly, there's a smoking section in here. It talks about, and I don't know that you have this anywhere, so I don't know that there's any policy on about this building. When you had an in-person meeting, I don't know that there's anything that says that you can't use these systems, cannabis or nicotine in one of your meetings. There's the section that you don't have anywhere right now, I don't believe, on if you want to participate by means of electronic equipment. And what does that look like? And if you don't, if Arthur drops off the call, does the meeting end? It walks through that whole process. And then it does the same thing for public participation by electronic equipment and what that looks like. It's kind of interesting that it's under conduct of meeting. I'm not sure about the title tied to those things, but it's all in here. It just gets through, that you have meeting minutes, all that business. And then the next section, this is where how the attorneys have said, we don't really suggest you have present to speak because you're opening yourself up. They understand the purpose of it, and that's why they make this section optional. So this is basically the present to speak section, and it's public address. You are tying the minutes. You're basically saying that someone's going to be the timekeeper, which is what you have. You can say no boisterous conduct. They have to identify themselves. That's it. So you could take the shipment policy and break it out. So it's just a section on present to speak, a section on maybe meeting procedure, things like that, around electronic and for board participation and public participation. You could figure that out, but it is very different than what you just have here under present to speak. So again, really the thought is, I think what you need to decide as you review these is, do you like them? So in the model policies for shipment, I think there's 24 that they had in the 9,000 series. Okay. But I just showed you meeting conduct, and that has several topics. And maybe in your naming of policies, if you're going to have several topics within a policy, they should become part of the heading. So meeting conduct, and then you're going to say electronic participation, present to speak. You should put those in the headings so you can find those policies, because I think there's nothing worse. I agree, Arthur, that it just makes it really hard when you're looking for a policy and it's not clear in the name. Most of the other ones they have are really clear. Officers, adoption of board policies, conflict of interest. But there's a couple that they have that are blended, but the language in them is really well done. And that's where I'm really suggesting that you take that language, but made me think about how we present that and what those titles look like. Thoughts?
I'm glad you were able to purchase this and were able to get access to this. Not that I agree with all the policies by shipment, but this does protect us and gives us a pretty good covering over the regulations from the state. So I do like that aspect of it. It will end up saving us in the long run instead of having to run everything by the attorney.
Yeah. And Brianna?
I think I just need to take a comparative look,
Yeah, and just start with one.
compare the two, and then,
Yeah, and that's so I would just say start with one and just you can see what's there.
mhm.
And I agree. I think sometimes policy gets a little too much legal, and you have to have a little bit of Willington in it, or your whatever your local district is. But you also want to make sure you're not taking out chunks that you lose your protections in it. The sections where when we start talking about you know your First Amendment right to freedom of speech, we don't want to mess with that, right? When we start talking about the bullying policy and sexual harassment, we don't want to mess with that. You can always go above what they're recommending, but you can't reduce the line. So if you want, and I was, this is, Brendan and I were kind of going back and forth on this. I think what I can do is I can create just like you have your policy books. I could take every single policy, I'm just going to start with the 9,000 series, just as a test. I could download them all from the shipment policy, model policy into a drive. I can share that folder with you. And then what that would allow, I can then do some comparisons with you. So you can see what they look like compared to what we have. I know you already have, like you have, and I was surprised they didn't have this, but you have a policy about new board member orientation and board member development. I didn't see anything in their model policies around that. So, which I think you should have. The other one, well, like you have a work sessions policy that's separate than the special meetings and executive session and regular meetings. I think it makes sense. You'll be able to see what they have in the 9,000s as a comparison, without having to line them up perfectly. I will do that work for you, but I think it's worth you almost starting with their policy when we are going to consider redoing something, if that makes sense.
Is it possible to get it in paper form?
So
Uh,
I can print them all. Yes.
Okay, and we have our books. Are we looking at things that are already in our books?
So you'd be comparing what you have in your book
Mm-hmm.
to what they have as a model policy.
Okay,
And honestly, and I don't want to print them all because it only takes a couple for you to review a couple to go, okay, I get it. You can see how clean it is. There's good stuff in there. I would adjust this section. This is not in this is not in their policy, but it's in our current policy. I would want to drag this over. I can do that work. But I think it's worth the review just from what I've seen. And I told Brenda I was really happy with what I saw. It's going to become even more important when um, when we end up going to get new legislation at the beginning of the year and we get this book of new legislation. They're going to give you a red line policy guide. And I think that's really handy. So we can make sure that we're meeting new legislation and not having to go, okay, where is it? So thoughts about that? My feeling is you can focus on just the four that or three that you have in front of you from the agenda today. You can make some comments on them. I think I only shared three with you because the electronically personally owned electronic mobile devices you've seen because it's the cell phone policy. But the other three, just to do some comparisons and then maybe make some comments. And when you're done with it, maybe just let me know, and maybe we can just have an additional meeting just to talk about those. You already have one scheduled, I think already. I don't have it off the top of my head though. Does that make sense to all of you as far as a path forward?
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay. And
So
were you
that
not?
that also doesn't interfere though with, because at the last, I don't remember what we did. Did we vote to suspend 81?
You did.
Okay.
Yep.
So with that suspended, we currently have no policy. So as long as this plan allows us to implement the new cell phone policy at the next meeting to have something on the books,
It does.
yeah, okay, then that's fine then.
Yep.
And we'll vote on that as a whole board
Correct.
at our next meeting. Okay,
Yep.
okay.
Comments, questions? I feel much better about the policy attack, to be honest with you, with this in place,
Mhm.
as opposed to an hour here, an hour there, just going back to the attorney constantly to make sure we're not missing something. This is much cleaner. I already have them. I can review them.
And if there's something we add that we're uncertain about, you can always check with the attorney.
You could,
You know,
unless it's just
but
language that's just really easy.
yeah,
But if it's something drastic that could be legal, that's
mm,
where we want to
yeah,
go. And so right now, when we have the attorney would review an entire policy because there usually is some sort of legal thing in it, but we already have that taken care of
yeah.
because you have the model policies.
No, I think that's great. Yeah.
So if that's
Why
the case,
reinvent the wheel?
what's that?
Why reinvent the wheel?
Yeah, Arthur said, he didn't agree with some of the shipment policies. I've seen that from Cabe as well. I
Mhm.
think there's some times that policy gets a little, it's too much, and I agree that you do need to make some adjustments.
Yeah.
You just want to make sure that they're still legal. That's really what it is, but you already know what you have is legal.
Mhm.
So your next meeting, unless you want to schedule one in between, would be to basically come back to these minus, and you can discuss at the full board meeting what you want to do with that one, the one that's already suspended. It's suspended. You could just leave it suspended for a long time. If you wanted to, you don't have to take action on that at the next meeting. But if you do leave it suspended and don't dump it, you are going to want to do a new number for the cell phone policy or add an A or something like that, which is easy to do. So we come back to these other 3 or 4, depending on how you look at it, with internet safety at your next policy meeting. You good with that?
Yep.
I think it's fine.
Brianna? Yes?
Yeah, that sounds good.
All right, perfect. So that's really all we had today. Was I wanted to give you a snapshot and hopefully get you rolling with some of these the shipment policies. And so now it's going to be on you to read, and if you have any problems with making comments or you don't know how to do it or you need help with it, just let me know. And I can definitely help you out. Good? All
Great.
right. If that's it, we are going to adjourn at 4:40 p.m. That was speedy.